So I'm very honored to welcome here today Scott Gregory, CEO of Hogan Assessments. So you have had a very diverse career as well, coming from teaching at 2 colleges, 15 years, and then moving on to the business consulting side at Pentair, where you headed up talent management and organizational development. Then you came to Hogan Assessments in 2013 and now are their CEO since 2017. What has been the most challenging experience ever since you became CEO?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. Actually, I think it is, we're in an unregulated industry, as you know. And what that means is that anyone with enough money can get into the assessment business. And with technology increasing rapidly and becoming less expensive to produce, that means a lot of new entrants into the field, many of whom know nothing and really care nothing about assessment, but see it as a good market to get into. So there are lots of competitors with lots of assessments out there, many of which there is just no evidence that they do anything that's important for an organization. And that's a real challenge because we are very committed to science, very committed to basing our assessments on research, and very committed to showing the outcomes, the organizational outcomes of using assessments effectively. But there are lots of competitors who really don't care about that, but have very shiny, engaging, assessment platforms, technology platforms. So it's a challenge to keep up and keep the message that there really are useful applications for assessments if you evaluate them correctly.
Leadership and requirements for leaders have changed over the past years. What does Hogan Assessments offer to company leaders in these change processes?
What's changed, so let's start here. What has changed about leadership requirements is more about the context and what I would call the technical context. That is, what kind of knowledge does a leader need to have today that maybe he or she didn't need 5 years, 10 years, certainly 10 years ago. The core of leadership, however, that is the ability to build an effective team, to sustain an effective team, really is quite consistent and has been quite consistent for a long time. What we try to do at Hogan, given that, is really provide insights that lead to self-awareness. We talk about strategic self-awareness for leaders. We try to provide insights from our assessments that help leaders develop strategic self-awareness. And what we mean by that is being able to understand what are my natural strengths and weaknesses, what are those things that I really need to manage about myself and my natural style in order to be able to develop the most effective team. So, the core of what we offer is a very precise, well-validated model of personality that provides this strategic self-awareness. From there, firms like yours, coaches that we work with, et cetera, really layer onto that. So what would you do differently? Because it's one thing to have insight, but it's another to know what would I do instead, right, of the thing that's not effective. So we try to provide both, but at the core, the assessments really are about providing strategic self-awareness for leaders.
So we all know that the assessment industry is going through some disruptive times as well. What's your take at the situation? Where do you think the industry will be in 30 years?
It's very interesting. We are really, I think, at a pivotal time, particularly with regard to data. So if you just take it from a data perspective, there are certainly GDPR in Europe has made a big impact on the degree to which people are careful about personal information like personality assessments and other kinds of assessment data. I think that's going to be worldwide. So if I think 30 years into the future, something like GDPR is going to be there's going to be a global standard. I actually think that benefits firms like ours, firms like yours, who are high integrity, who really set about to use the data in a professionally responsible way. So we actually welcome that. We're prepared for it. We try to prepare for it every day. So I think that's one thing, that one prediction I would make about the assessment industry. More regulation, particularly on the data side. I think that's healthy. It's good for everyone. Secondly, I think methods like artificial intelligence. Big data is a buzzword. We like to say we've been using big data for at least 30 years already. But what big data means in the future, I think, as we get better, as companies get better at gathering data and gathering relevant data on employees, I think there's going to be a lot more data to work, a lot more high quality data to work with. So I think the assessment business will be able to make predictions in 30 years that we just can't do today, because the quality of the data and the volume of the data will be better than it is today. And I think we're already headed there. Industry's already headed there. So that's another thing. Artificial intelligence will impact the assessment industry. There's a lot of hype about that today. If you read the popular press, you would think that artificial intelligence already is the assessment of the future and making all these great predictions that no one else has ever been able to make before. That's just not true today, but it will be true in 30 years. We'll have much more efficient ways of matching people to jobs. We'll have much more efficient ways of understanding what job requirements are. And we'll have a lot better continuous improvement process, because as machine learning gets more and more sophisticated, the quality of the predictions we can make with machines will just increase very rapidly. So I think in 30 years, there will be a lot of AI in use, and it'll be very effective, much higher quality than we're seeing today.
So today, companies are looking for more diversity in their teams, and especially in the German-speaking countries, we're struggling to put women in the C-suite. We're working with quotas, but that doesn't work. So I'm curious to know whether your data suggests there's a difference between men and women in leadership.
Yeah, it's a great question. And we've done a lot of research on this topic. As it turns out, males and females really do not see differences on personality variables. So personality variables related to leadership effectiveness, meaning that males and females should succeed in leadership at essentially the same rate, or there shouldn't be any bias one way or the other. So what that tells us is that the differences are not related to true differences between males and females. The differences are related to the process of selecting leaders, and it's an inherently biased process. And I think there are lots of reasons for that, some of which are historical, and interviews being the main assessment method used globally. Interviews are easily biased depending on who the interviewer is and what they're looking for. And traditionally, the popular press, even the leadership research community, academic community studying leadership, really has focused on charismatic, bold, highly confident leader characteristics. We have found that those are, while they're important, in and of themselves, they are not the answer. So it is some combination of strong drive, results orientation, and humility. That is, being willing to listen to people, being willing to learn from your mistakes, admit your mistakes, one's mistakes, et cetera. So I think we've been heavily biased on one side of the picture, and that has favored males. And mainly, I think it favors males still, because it just perpetuates the status quo. Most leaders are males. So if we're basing our understanding of what leadership is off of them, we will hire more males. That doesn't mean we will hire more effective males. It just means we'll hire more males. So if companies were using assessment more effectively, personality assessment in particular, they wouldn't be seeing the differences in numbers of males and females hired into leadership roles.
Okay. And what kind of recommendation could we give women to step up and be seen in the organization?
It's a wonderful question, and a lot has been written about this. But I'll tell you one little data-oriented anecdote that may be helpful, and that is, if you look at 360 data, and there's really good research on this. If you look at 360 data, what you see is that from other people's perspectives, they tend to rate female leaders higher than the female leaders rate themselves. On the other hand, if you look at 360 data for male leaders, the male leaders tend to rate themselves higher than other people rate them. So women tend to underrate, maybe undersell, I think, some of their qualities. And historically, stereotypically, they've been rewarded for doing that. But it can be a problem, and particularly a problem when the interview or other sort of easily biased processes are at the center of the selection process, because women just may not show up as being as confident and so forth as males, when in fact they really are. They just may suppress some of those characteristics.
So the recommendation to those companies would be to revise their selection processes?
Absolutely. We know, based on our research, that using personality-based assessments will create, to predict leadership success and to select leaders, will create a level playing field. That is, they will not bias you against females or males, for that matter. It will create an assessment process that chooses people based on their skill, not on their gender. We think that's really incredibly important.
So over the past 10 to 20 years, have you seen changing target groups? So traditionally, Hogan Assessment was used at leadership executive level. Have you seen the target groups change over the course of the years to make better predictions?
Yeah. When we started, mostly we were doing selection work at lower levels in the organization. And at that time, we were also trying to convince the academic community that personality actually predicted performance in a variety of jobs. So we were kind of struggling on two fronts. One was within organizations, and secondly was to gain credibility within the academic community that personality actually did what we were saying it did, that is, predict real outcomes for organizations. As that message sunk in, and as the data, the research made it just inescapable that is true, companies started using assessments, our assessments, at higher levels. Because those are consequential in terms of the return for the organization or the mitigation of risk if they got, hiring someone, the right person versus the wrong person. What's interesting is, so there's a lot of education in the market, and if you think about the German market, Meta has been our partner since 2005, have really educated the market here on what personality can do and how it can be valuable at various levels in the organization. So there's really good data on that. So I think that's one part of the answer. The other thing is, the one thing about increased competition in the assessment market in general. I mean, there's a lot of poor quality assessments out there, but one thing they've done for the consumer of assessments is made them more cost effective, quicker, more applicable to lower level mass volume kind of hiring situations. And so in a sense, the market has come full circle. And today you see personality assessments, Hogan assessments used at every level in the organization. And at various times in the past, that's been either lower level, higher level, now it's really across the board. And throughout the employee life cycle. So that's the other change we've seen is that, 20, 25 years ago, most of our work was selection. Probably about 10 to 15 years ago, the whole idea of strategic self-awareness, gaining insight, the power of personality to help leaders in particular understand themselves better and manage their characteristics better, their behaviors better, really started to take off. So today, about 50% of what we do is selection, about 50% is development at multiple levels in the organization. So kind of two changes that have gone together.
Mm-hmm.